Hi guys, you're welcome to the first of our Excel series, and in a couple of videos we would be demystifying using Excel for data analysis. So in this particular lesson I would like to explain relative referencing, absolute referencing, and cell referencing, and I have them all listed here. But first of all, I'd like to explain some basic concepts in Excel, like rows and columns. So Excel is fundamentally a spreadsheet software, and then it arranges data into rows and columns. And then columns are being denoted by alphabets. So you have column A, column B, column C, column D, while rows are being denoted by numbers. So you have row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5. And an intersection of a column and a row gives you a cell. So you can see it's a combination of a row and a column gives you a cell. So for example, where column E meets row 7, you have E7 there, and E7 is a cell. So and this is cell E7. Also, where column B meets row 2, we have pan here. So pan, you can see, sorry, where column B meets row 2, we have 23 here, and this is a cell, a singular cell, and you can see it's being represented by B2. This is cell B2 here. Okay, this is fine now. So now let's get right to relative referencing, absolute referencing, and cell referencing. So first off, here I have a small data set of the person's expense data. So and there are two sheets in this workbook here. So the first sheet represents how much the person spends on food, and the next sheet here is a category of expense items from food, transport, rent, and internet, and the likes. So our first task here is to extract or calculate the values for the revenue. And then we know revenue usually is price units sold. Yeah. So let's extract values for revenue for all these rows here. So first off, I'm going to multiply B2 as the first price by the units sold, and that's C2. We have a value here, that's 46. And I can just drag this down, and you can see how Excel does something very interesting. Automatically, it figures out how what to multiply each of the cells with. So on inspection of D3, you can see how Excel is multiplying B3 by C3. Mind you, what we typed in our formula was B2 by C2. And if you go to the next one here, you can see it's doing D4 by C4. So that's the thing. Excel's default is to do what we call a relative referencing. That's the default relative referencing now. Now the so let's try something else here. So now I want to extract tax you pay on each of these items here. Remind you, so for this particular lesson, we're going to use a tax rate of 5%, and then have the year. So now let's extract. So for each of this money you spent buying all these things, or money you get from selling all these things, how much would you have to pay in tax here? So let's do that also. So now I'm going to do in brackets. I'm going to do B2 multiplied by C2. Close the bracket, and I'm going to multiply it by where I have the tax. And tax is on cell I7. I'll say I7 there. And I have my value. Watch what happens now when I try to autofill for this one here. You can see how it doesn't give me any response here. And then the reason for this is that Excel's default, as I mentioned earlier, is to do relative referencing. So he gets the first value correctly. So he multiplies B2 C2 and multiplies the answer by 0.05 here now. Well, for the next one now, it does B3 C3 correctly, but then he also does I8, so he goes down, but I8 is empty. And that's why we have an error. And same thing is happening here also. It does B4 and I9. I9 is empty now. Now this is where it's very important to learn referencing, and specifically absolute referencing now. So what we'll do now is to lock cell I7 and make all these values multiplied by just I7. Now do we do this? So I'm going to edit this formula and say in brackets B2 multiplied by C2, close the brackets. And I want to lock I7 absolutely. That is, I want to lock both rows, both the row and the column. I'm going to say dollar sign before I and the dollar sign before 7. Okay, I didn't type multiply, sorry. So multiply by dollar sign before I, dollar sign before 7. And it works. Now when we're trying to autofill this, so what happens? They are all being multiplied by I7. And this is because we've done an absolute referencing on cell I7. Basically, we've logged in cell I7 and told Excel to ignore your default format and instead do an absolute referencing on cell I7 and multiply all our revenue values by it. And we have our answer. You can see how it works here. So we have relative referencing. And then something to note here interesting is that we can lock either the column, sorry, like we have here A2, or we can lock the row, that's B$3. So here we're locking the column A, and here we're locking row 3. Then what this means is that whenever you copy a formula, it locks in that particular column, but it allows freedom along the rows. Whilst here, it locks in that particular row, but allows freedom along the columns. So next, let's figure out cell referencing. So on this sheet here, I have category of expense items. So there's food, transport, rent, internet, and transport. Okay, sorry, first off, I would like to get a total for all this. I'm sorry. I'm going to do a sum of all the values here. I have a total. Okay, perfect. Now, so I have a sheet on expenses here, on category of expenses, sorry. So I have food, transport, rent, internet, and I want to get the total of all these values here. So I have a sum here also. For sum. And we have $490 as the sum now. But if you notice something very easily, the food here is empty. So I want us to use cell referencing to extract the value for the total money spent on food. And how do we do this? So we already know that the total money spent on food here is on cell E6. On cell E6 here. Okay. So next, with this in mind now, it's very simple. Simply you type the name of the workbook first. That's food sheet. And then you type what cell you want from food sheet now. But then if it has a space, you have to encapsulate your formula in single quotes. And what this means basically is I'm going to say equal to single quotes food sheet, close the quotes, exclamation mark, and I'll say I want E6. And it extracts the value very easily now. So this is how we do cell referencing. And then this brings me to the end of the first lesson on Excel. So please catch up on our other lessons and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.